Alright, okay, good evening everyone. Welcome to the start of a new week. We'll get started for today's session. So as usual, quick disclaimer. Since we're talking about financial markets, just be aware that everything I'm presenting today, solely based on my point of view, right? They do not directly translate to any sort of a financial advice or investment advice, okay? And of course, trading involves risk, so just make sure you're aware of your personal risk tolerance. There's no way I'm able to, do that for you. So just be aware, okay? So with that set aside, let's jump into the markets, right? I think last week was a pretty I wouldn't say market was eventful, but if you've been following the kind of the bombing, okay, that's really happening between Israel and Iran, right? Obviously, we wouldn't love to see such conflict, but again, things like that would have a direct impact in the market as well. Though, honestly, I'm actually a little bit surprised that we did not see the market actually creating the volatility, okay, of what has happened over the weekend. And of course, over the weekend, what happened was a U.S. actually, sent some bombers and then, bomb the nuclear facilities in Iran, right? So I was actually expecting the market to open the week with a risk off kind of sentiment. But to be very honest, the market was pretty resilient. There was some movement, there are some gaps, but we didn't really see that follow through, right? Which I will talk a little bit about because we did have like one particular pair on Aussie, one particular trade on the pair on Aussie yen, which I was expecting, that to actually really take off. Yeah, so that's something we'll talk a little bit about as we jump into the charts and talk about the Aussie yen trade as well, okay? So if you take a look at, aside from that, if you take a look at what was planned in terms of the economic calendar, we generally do not have a lot this week. We have a couple of like CPIs coming in here and there, the Canadian side, the Aussie side. And then of course to end of the week, we have the Canadian GDP as well as the US Core Price Index. But I feel that much of the market focus is still going to be very much on the ongoing potential crisis, right? Will we jump into a World War III event? Will the conflict escalate? Will Russia come in? Things like that, right? Definitely you want to keep an eye on those developments as well. And of course, if things start to escalate, create even more uncertainty, more fear in the market, then yeah, we'll probably see that volatility kicks in terms of like some of the risk assets, okay. Yeah, so with that said, let's jump into the charts. I will talk about the Aussie yen first, okay, since we did have this trade running. Really depend on how you manage your trade. For me, I did shift it to break even today, earlier today, because I was expecting the move to really continue to the downside because of the uncertainty where risk currencies like Aussie would drop and then safe haven currencies like the yen would strengthen and then would push this pair down. It did move lower, giving me the opportunity to shift stops to break even, and then price just popped back up. Got me out at break even, right? But of course, if you're managing that trade like slightly differently, I think the price came back down. So really depends on individual on how you manage that trade, okay? But let me talk about this in terms of like the 4 hour, what I'm still expecting. I think overall structure did not really change much, right? We're still looking at this with the possibility of a big 3 wave pattern, okay? And until price really take out that swing high at 94.80, I think overall direction is still gonna be bearish for now, right? And we can't expect this to pull back all the way towards like somewhere around 90.80. Which really give that massive downside opportunity, right? And if you take a look at this particular trade setup, that was triggered last Friday. It went pretty nicely. I can't mention also, you can actually extend this targets. But even if you set it at the swing low, of course, with 1:2 risk to reward ratio, it came very close and then it pops back up, right? So that's where I got out at break even. Okay. My take right now is if you're still in this trade, I would still suggest, based on my style, to shift stops to break even, right? Because to be honest, we really don't expect this to come back up, right? The idea of this is really this being the swing high. We had this push. The market should start going lower, okay? The longer it consolidate within this range, there's a higher possibility this would just pop up and then take out liquidity here and maybe then only come back down, which may tag your stop, okay? So that whole idea about shifting stops to break even is based on the principle where I don't expect price to come back anymore. If it does, then it lowers the probability of this trade winning, and therefore, the decision is then to shift stops to break even, right? So that's the whole idea behind it. Okay. Yeah, so that's on Aussie yen, right? If you're still in this trade, then manage it accordingly. Okay. If you're not in this trade, if like me got out a break even, to be honest, I think there's still a lot of opportunity over here. I'm still gonna keep an eye on this. But of course, right now we don't have a setup as we are looking at this right now, right? But of course, if this decides to come down with momentum, take out this low, this would start to build a new swing leg, and then the pullback would obviously opens up sell trade opportunity as we go, okay? So I think we might still get an opportunity to sell it anyway. We'll see. Okay, so that's a very, very quick update for the Aussie yen. Okay, there's also a particular trade that I took on euro dollar, but of course this one is on the intraday 15 minute. So for those of you in the report, I did not really send out something like this because it's just too short term, and things can shift very, very quickly, right? That's why something like this on an intraday basis, I don't really talk about it in the report. But I just want to highlight on this here because the setup is exactly the same, right? I did not really annotate much here because this is personal. But you can see the same thing, right? We have this high swept liquidity, and then we have this swing low gets taken out, of course, with that gap. And then the same thing here, right? This is basically your fair value gap. This is basically your order block, right? And then we have that confluence around that fib level, and then that's where the entry is. Exactly the same setup that I used to actually execute those trades, right? So this one here, euro dollar, while we're still looking at the sell side of things, again on this higher time frame here, we're just simply expecting this to push down and then continue up. It might happen, right? But of course right now it's not the clearest of all. Again, riding on this on a very, very short term move, right? You can see that that's the 15-minute play. That's it. Okay. Yeah, so just want to bring this up because some of you may be more of an intraday, like shorter term, okay, and the whole framework, the whole principle applies, right? That's the thing, right? Of course, you don't want to jump into every other setup you see. You still want to be clear in terms of the framework where direction bias is always the primary part, right? Do you want to focus on the sell? Do you want to focus on the buy? Do you have a clear directional bias before you look for the setup itself? So if I'm looking at 15-minute, right, just to share with you a little bit about my intraday, I often look at the H1 for my higher time frame. Okay, so on the higher time frame on the H1, it's pretty straightforward. We kind of have like this low the market takes out, so that becomes a primary high. And then I see this as a potential liquidity sweep from this high as well, right? That's the 15-minute sweep. This is the hourly sweep. And then of course we have that gap, right? So that also carries momentum to downside. So I'm thinking, all right, there's an opportunity that I can look for intraday where this can potentially take out this low and then goes higher, right? And then that's your channel. Okay, so that's the whole thought process on the directional bias and leads into the intraday kind of setup for today. Okay, yep. So that's just to share with you in terms of like you can apply this on a lower time frame as well. The mechanics and the frameworks are the same. Okay. Good. So let's jump into the dollar index. Okay. So over here, dollar index as this continue to develop, obviously the fibs would require a little bit of adjustment, right? But the overall expectation remains the same. We are expecting the dollar to strengthen. Again, if we have the conflict escalate, dollar being a safe haven, thus see potentially more upside being supported as well. Yeah, so this one here, we're not expecting some kind of like major reversal for now. We're just simply expecting a simple tree wave, even potentially just as a pullback here, and then maybe one more downside right after this might take up that high. But that's something that we don't need to be too concerned with at this moment. We are looking at the markets, on a day-to-day regular basis, so we can keep it flow with what's price developing. So for now, this is the expectation of it, right? If you can get a pullback towards the key area, we can get an opportunity to look for the buy side of things, right? So euro dollar, right? Kind of mentioned a little bit just now on the lower time frame. This is what we can expect, right? This looks very, very corrective. Okay. Initially the expectation was, all right, if this comes down impulsive, and then this starts to form correctively, we might see more downside. But as of now, it's a little bit of a ambiguity, right? It can be either side of things. So that's where I can suggest that, all right, we'll remain patient for now. We'll wait for a clearer structure. Either price takes this low impulsively, or price just sweep that and then starts to bounce off impulsively. Then we can expect more upside. Okay. So yeah, euro dollar right now is not the clearest in terms of what structure we are looking at, and therefore the direction might not be the clearest, right? Then we have the pound dollar. Pound dollar is clear, right? You can see that this is very obvious. A diagonal. We have this impulsive move to the downside. We managed to take out that low as well. So if you can get a corrective pullback here, right? Okay, but going back towards like 50 and 618 zone, that will give us an opportunity to look for the sell. Okay, and very, very simply, we can look at it as a 1, 2, 3. Right? So this week, if this starts to pull back this week, we may get something. What I like about this is also that the 50 and 618 is just above this high, which from an SMC model, that would serve as a liquidity point, right? So we'll see. Okay, this one might develop into a potential trade later part this week. Okay, Aussie dollar also very, very clear. Okay, so you can see some of this is moving nicely, right? Aussie, we expect the downside because of risk off environment. Now we are getting very, very close to this key level. But the idea here is, can price move lower than that? Possibly, right? So this is where I would combine with the principle of a tree wave. As of now, this high to this low does look as a one swing leg. Okay, so if you get a pullback, if we have sufficient risk to reward ratio, we can consider the third wave, right? 1, 2, and then we can take a trade here down. Yeah, so obviously the fit needs adjustment, right? As price keeps developing, the fit will need to be readjusted. But the expectation remains the same. Okay, so this one here will probably need to give it time and see if we can get a pullback. And then we'll still look for the downside here eventually. Okay, so that's on Aussie dollar. Pretty clear cut, pretty straightforward. Dollar Canadian, very, very nice little impulsive leg to the upside. So we are definitely looking for upside. Okay, just kind of waiting for that pullback, and then we'll look for the opportunity to get involved in the buy, right? Okay, the upside on this is pretty huge. Okay, so again, when we get an opportunity to get involved in the buy on the dollar CAD, I would personally, kind of manage that if I had the chance, to really aim for this peak, or even higher, right? But to give you that perspective, okay, if let's say this starts to pull back, we manage to get involved in a potential trade, say something like this, and then the stop is just below on the lower time frame. Obviously, taking that swing high gives you about 1:2. But if you are able to go for all towards this high, you can see that risk reward can be really like 1:6, 1:7. Of course, you're not gonna have that full trade running. You're gonna take partial profits as it go. Okay, but eventually, let's say half of it, you're still able to capitalize on like 1:3 point something, right? Yeah, so that's the plan. That's the expectation on this particular pair, for this week. Okay, so keeping an eye on that too. Okay, dollar yen. Okay, coming up very, very impulsive for now. So again, for me, the trade plan here is to look for sign of reversal over here, right? So the market is currently testing that 123 fit, okay? And of course, if you have that channel structure, it's kind of like testing at the top, okay? Not a sell yet, but for this to really develop into a sell setup, we might even take up that high as a sweep point, okay? So you can look at this as 1, 2, and of course 3 over here. Internally 1, 2, 3. Take out that high, then only start reversing. Okay. Now I'm not too in a rush for this right now because price did really come very, very close to that around 148.60. So again, that might actually be the liquidity sweep point. Then we need the reverse, right? So you definitely want to keep an eye on that. Don't rush into a sell, but wait for the market to really give you that clear, I would say, clue, okay, that the upside is there, the reversal is coming, okay. Now what can happen here is this can start to develop into a crawl as well, okay, and then the crawl breaks that high, give you that first impulsive leg to downside, then obviously you just wait for the pullback and then get involved from there, right? So again, it might take time, so there's no need to be rushing into that, okay? Gold, okay, gold is something very, very surprising, right? Because again, when US bombed Iran, I was expecting risk-off environment. I was expecting gold to really shoot up, but you can see gold is basically just bouncing up and down. Not much of a volatility, not much of a movement, right? Yeah, so again, just with this observation, a reminder not to like take a trade just simply because of an event happening, right? Because if you just decide to buy into something because of the bombing, then it may not play out very, very nicely, okay? So understand that there are many factors concurrently affecting price, right? And as traders, we will never know 100% like what will move price or why prices are moving, just simply because there are so many other factors, right? So oftentimes we are not trying to explain why price move, but we're basically just leveraging on the patterns that tend to repeat itself, and then we just capitalize on that, right? So even when we talk about like risk on, risk off, and then what are the prices that tend to be affected, we are looking at it from a pattern perspective, right? So what I mean by that is, for example, if out of the 10 times historically where there is an uncertainty, there's fear in the market, and then gold prices tends to shoot up, maybe out of 10 times of uncertainty, 8 times gold prices actually went up, then there is certain pattern happening, and then we start to draw that correlationship, right? Where if there's a risk-off environment, gold prices tends to go up. But it's not 100%, right? Understand that as well. Okay, so this was something that, again, did not really happen as of today. So from this perspective here, I would say technically this can still develop, right? Whether gold price can go all the way back down to like 3,260 or even just here, I think there's this opportunity, okay, for the short-term sell. Okay, so this one is where a flag. I think I also mentioned in the report where there might be an opportunity here, but I did not put a pending as of today because, again, understanding that the risk-off environment may actually cause the gold price to just shoot up impulsively, right? So that's where I'm being a little bit cautious. Just really want to let the market settle down on Monday or maybe Tuesday market, and then come back and see, all right, if the news, the event did not really had a major impact in gold, then that's where we can go back to the technicals perspective and then look for that setup and trade, right? Okay, so gold here, this is what the expectation is. Okay, look out for those areas for a potential sell trade to the downside. Okay, silver more or less the same, right? We are in an expectation where the fifth wave is completed. We have this nice little impulsive move. Of course, we have that swing high taken out as well. Okay, from Elliott wave is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. From SMC perspective, that's a liquidity sweep. So if you can get the price to just pull back towards a key level, we can look for the third wave down. Okay, so silver, there is that setup here. Okay, again, this is a very, very small little liquidity sweep, right? But of course, this is the major one over here. Okay, now obviously this low hasn't been taken out, right? The confirmation of this being a liquidity sweep is where price needs to take this low. But I'm not really overly concerned with that because we're not fully trading on SMC, right? We're also confluencing it with wave perspective, so this can suggest that alright, that might be some downside. And then of course we do have the order block here aligned pretty nicely with the fib. Okay, we have a little bit of internal double top here as well. So I'm pretty comfortable with this setup if we can get it, right? Of course, given you want to pay attention to the development of the crisis. Okay, if things really escalate very fast and the market jumps into a risk-off environment, you probably don't want to sell silver. Okay, so just bear that in mind as we're looking at this too. Okay, crude oil here, we are kind of expecting the pullback. Very range bound right now. Okay, but we're kind of expecting that pullback, and then that will give an opportunity to look for the buy, right? Bear in mind for crude oil, the correlation with war outbreak is of course when there's a war conflict. If the war is going to be like really serious, crude oil prices tends to shoot up as well. Okay, so that's something to note. But for now, that's the key level. Okay, S&P, we came down, not as anticipated in terms of the momentum, because we're looking at initially, nice little tree swing where we can even consider some short-term sell. But this came down very, very corrective, so not much of an opportunity to sell there. So then the take here is wait for it to complete the pullback into the key area, and then we look to buy it. All right. So yeah, the key areas are here. Okay. Pound yen managed to break the top with a little bit of momentum, right? So obviously we'll look at this more of the upside opportunity right now if you can zoom out. Okay. With this whole structure here, we even clear off this here right now, right? I mean, with this break, right? We had a break previously, but again, it broke and then just consolidated. But with this last impulse late, kind of give us the perspective where, okay, we can start to look for more upside, okay? And what I'll do here is I would then shift this to the low here, and we'll then update this as an invalidation level, okay? Meaning, as long as price stays above the swing high right now, if we can get a corrective pullback, that will be an opportunity to look for a buy, right? Because we get a very nice little impulsive clean break to the upside. So give it some time, right? See how things would roll from there. Aussie yen, kind of just now mentioned about this as well. So yeah, just manage this accordingly. Pound odd, very unfortunate. Okay. Last week we had a trade looking to buy here, and then we kind of got swept out, and then now the market really went off. Okay. We did look to get involved with this pullback last week as well, but the pullback did not came. So yeah, okay, the direction was there, but the setup wasn't fulfilled. I think structurally right now we're still looking at upside, right? Okay, so that was kind of like a fake break, okay, with huge momentum to the upside. We're just simply waiting for the pullback. Okay, if we can get a pullback, that will give us a buy trade opportunity. The bigger structure remains as of now like this. Okay, that's what I would be putting in terms of the forecast. Alright, so that's on pound odd. Probably need some time for it to do that pullback, okay, to the downside. BTC very, very nicely coming down. I'm not a fan of crypto. I don't really focus in trading it a lot. But I think last week had some decent opportunity to the downside, right? It came down very nicely to the fib level, and then we did see some nice little reaction, okay? So if this reaction here can sustain itself, and the reaction from the market is just a simple pullback correctively, this actually opens up upside opportunity for BTC, right? Because then you can say that this is completing a three-wave structure. But obviously you want to see this as a corrective pullback. The market shouldn't come down too fast, okay? Because if it's coming down too fast, then it's not a corrective pullback. This can continue to drop further. Okay, so that's my take on BTC, right? So a couple of things over here. I do see Rafael has a question as well. We'll take a look at the euro pound. But based on my list over here, right? I think the pound dollar, like I mentioned, the dollar Canadian. A couple of things here to look out for. Gold and silver, obviously. I think silver is the closest one in potentially giving us a setup, like maybe even tomorrow or Wednesday. But because we are touching on precious metal, safe haven assets, you just want to be aware of the development, happening over there in terms of Iran, Israel, US, and even Russia, right? Yeah, so those are the things. Yeah, other than that, then we have the Aussie yen, right? If you're in, manage to trade. If you're not in, like me, I'll wait for the next setup that would appear on Aussie yen to kind of capitalize on that. Okay. Good. So let's jump into the euro pound and kind of talk about this a little bit here as well. Okay, I would zoom out a little bit to really see context of this. This pattern, okay, it's kind of giving me the structure of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So I would be a little bit careful on this here, and I'm not likely gonna expect a big pullback, but this would be a simple projection. Okay, back towards this area here. Okay, yeah, that would be the take on it. Okay, what I would be very reluctant to do is this label here. Okay, seldom we see wave 3 kind of complete with a diagonal structure, right? So what can potentially be is this can be a simple ABC as well, right? It's a 3 wave, and then this is an ending diagonal, then the pullback. I mean, then you would potentially expect this pullback to maybe come back a little bit deeper, beyond that low. But of course, the bare minimum expectation is price to come and retest this low here. Okay, so I'll keep it as clean as just this. This is definitely looking a little bit more of a crawl structure, right? So short term, we can expect that kind of pullback. Okay, back towards somewhere around 0.85 level. Okay. Yeah, so that's the take on euro pound. I already mentioned my BTC buy trade was based on your technical analysis. Yeah, great to know that helps, right? Going back to BTC. Yeah, I mean, if you're in this, manage to kind of tag in at the low, then obviously entered a very nice little position, right? Can manage that if you're still in the trade. I would say if this takes off, right, can we hit an all-time high? That's a possibility, okay? Because we can see that this can be completed 3 wave. If this takes off, we can really test that high, which is the all-time high of Bitcoin. Okay, so the upside potential can be there. Okay, yeah, so that's on that. Okay, Sue asks, what about dollar franc? Okay, let's take a look. Dollar franc. Okay, dollar franc here. Oftentimes we kind of compare it to like euro dollar is like the inverse of it. But the pattern isn't really showing that inverse relationship right now, okay, against the euro dollar. Okay, so again, it's something that I don't advocate, right? I usually say if you're looking at market correlation, you use it as a risk management point of view. You don't use it for your trading decision in terms of getting in and getting out, right? So dollar franc here, I'm a little bit particular where this low isn't tagged. Okay, if this low was tagged and this was the move, great. we'll see this as a double bottom, and then definitely you want to be more aligned to look for upside potential. But this is not tag, right? Which I'm a little bit picky on that. Kind of put this in a situation where you would love to see it come back and get tagged. Okay, so that's the part where I'm not gonna be bullish because of this. Okay, I'm gonna be looking at, or I'll say I'll be expecting price to come back and tag it, and that's the reason why I'm not gonna be bullish. But you don't want to be selling here as well, right? Because technically you don't have a nice little kind of like sell point of view, okay? Because if you want to sell, right, you would probably want to see an impulse leg, and this gives you a corrective push, right? Not sort of a little V shape here. Okay, so that's a little bit of like not the best clarity in terms of what price is developing in terms of structure. So I would say this is something you probably just want to stay out first and give the market this week and see how it's gonna play out. Okay, if it can take out the areas of, or say this high here, right? You can take it out with momentum. Then I'll ignore this and say, all right, there's a good chance we'll see upside from that, right? Then you would see it as this is done. Okay, but if we can't take that out with momentum and this just does something like that, then you can expect this low to be taken out. Only then you start to reverse and look for upside, right? Then that will be the structure itself. Okay, so it's a bit tricky right now in terms of like what is developing. Really because this low hasn't been tagged. Okay, as I mentioned, if it's tagged, to me it's super clear. You definitely want to look for upside if that's going to be tagged. Right? Cool. Any questions? Any other questions that you guys have? All good. Great. Yeah, if all good, I hope today's session gave you some insights into the week. Okay, and hopefully that gives you clarity as well in terms of like opportunities you can really keep an eye on moving forward from here. Okay, so yep, all the best for the week itself, and as usual, we'll see you guys next Monday. Okay, so good night. See you guys then.